And it's because I find it absolutely fascinating. Because from my perspective, these guys have all the tools at their disposal to be as successful as possible. Far more successful than I could ever be, but they don't wield it with any real conviction. In most cases, it's wielded with ego more than anything else.
Yeah, they're just
They have the access, they have the experience.
The thing is that whenever you have a person that has access to tools and then they don't, like if you watch a monkey, you ever seen a monkey try to use a hammer and nails? It can't figure it out. But you know why? Because it's a fucking monkey. It's stupid. Yeah. That's it.
They have the pipelines, the platform. They used to have the audience, but they don't have that anymore. The reader, the gamer, the people that they need to be able to have a job in the first place, they became insignificant to them. Or an enemy in some cases. And when you turn your back on the people that keep you employed, well, you find yourself unemployed.
What a surprise.
Odd how that works.
Wow.
Polygon is the latest to fall, and I think they're emblematic because in a lot of cases they represent the meme of the journalists that hate the gamers. Well, not
when Kotaku dies, gamers will have won. The moment that Kotaku shuts down, that will be the total gamer victory.
Just the ones that they disagree with, which just so happens to be the vast majority of them, which doesn't work out very well.
Celebration stream? Yes,
but,
it will be.
You know, talented writers know how to cross that bridge.
Maybe that day I'll be going through the job application process to work at Burger King.
They know that you can still communicate and find ways to communicate with an audience that you disagree with. But Polygon is the best example of what happens when you turn your back on them entirely or you take up arms against them. So today what I want to do is I want to talk about the fall of Polygon. I want to talk about the continued death throes of legacy media. But I still think written media has value.
Written media has more value than any other kind of media in terms of transmitting information. The problem of why written media is dying, there's two problems. Number one, written media has been co-opted by people with biases, and those biases are so overt and so badly hidden that it just basically alienates anybody reading it because they realize that they're reading bullshit. So that's number one. And number two, people are becoming less verbal and less proficient in reading. So people are getting dumber and the articles are getting dumber. And you put those two together and you don't have a lot of people reading.
Diversity of opinions and platforms is necessary. But that would require for games media to be relatable and to start delivering value. And I don't see that happening. Polygon has been sold off to Valnet. Most of its staff has been laid off. Only a few senior staff remain. Made their Doom 2016 gameplay video live on as a testament to their contributions to this industry. While it may come as a shock to some, it shouldn't, especially given how severe the layoffs have been across gaming media. Anyone who's been paying attention could have seen this coming. The entire writing staff announced their exits on Blue Sky, which tells you everything that you need to know. And in the eyes of many gamers, this wasn't a tragedy.
It's because Blue Sky actually isn't popular, and them leaving Twitter to go to Blue Sky is them shooting themselves in the foot. Nobody's going to go over and follow you on Blue Sky and move you on Blue Sky. All you want is a safe space for other people that agree with you, but there's no organic viewership or growth there at all.
Long overdue correction. I'm just gonna say
for any non-Americans, Blue Sky is it's the mental health center for people who can't cope with Donald Trump and Elon Musk.
Nobody reads gaming articles like they used to. I've documented this decline before, but it's worth reiterating just how far these platforms have fallen. Legacy sites like IGN, Kotaku, PC Gamer, GameSpot,
heavy weapons. Why do you have to do this to him, man? You have to bring out the grass?
Polygon, all of them started their descent around 2014. And they had a steep decline after 2018 that they never bounced back from. In the eyes of the players, these sites have stopped being informative. They've stopped being relatable. They started pushing
2014 is when Gamergate happened, by the way. Gamergate is what started all of this and killed them. They just didn't realize it until years later.
issues, parroting PR talking points, and outright alienating the very people who once supported them. Most articles now feel like sanitized marketing, or worse, ideological messaging wrapped in clickbait headlines. And year after year, we've watched as these sites consolidated, laid off, or pivoted to something completely irrelevant in a desperate attempt to stay relevant.
Well, they just can't make any money because people aren't going to the website. And this is, so the real problem, and this is like a really good example of this, is that, so do you remember this tweet that this girl, so she got fired for talking, ironically, or unironically, is that she made a tweet talking about like me, because I was discussing live streaming and like why I thought it was less important for a new content creator to live stream, and she's like talking about like right-wing extremism, and it's like, when all you are is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. And the issue is that these people are so one-note and one-dimensional that they don't have any real intelligence to be able to evaluate things in a way that makes sense. So the problem isn't even entirely the ideology. It's that the ideology is being used by people that can't really communicate very well, don't understand ideas, and can't conceptualize anything beyond their one-dimensional understanding of the world. That's the issue, and that's the real reason why these people are losing their jobs. It's because they can't write articles that are good and interesting, because they don't. That's the problem. It's literally that simple.
No other outlet better represents that downfall than Polygon. When Polygon launched in 2012, it was ambitious. They wanted to be more than just a review site. They wanted to set a standard, uncensored opinions, long-form journalism, video documentaries, cultural think pieces, and for a while, it worked. Their earlier reviews were sharp, polished, and well-written. They gave you far more than you asked for, but you read it anyway because it was damn good content. In a lot of ways, some of their earlier writing, like that's the reason why, is that most writers nowadays, people don't realize that writing is a form of leisure for a lot of people, and reading is a form of leisure. And so many people who are writers don't understand how to write with any degree of brevity or wit or like anything other than transmitting information in a very boring way. And the ones that do it in a self-indulgent way, where like they're trying to make these like metaphorical references to something that they learned about in 8th grade or 12th grade. And it's like, haha, this is so clever because we're a theater kid. They're just not good writers at the end of the day. And reflect what we see in video reviews and commentary today. Introspective takes on how playing a game makes you feel, what it reminds you of, what you wish other studios could learn from. And we had a solid pulse on what concerns players the most, but then there was a cultural shift, and Polygon just didn't shift with it. Instead, they veered off the cliff. The turning point came with Gamergate 2014, a controversial flashpoint in the industry that changed the tone of games media pretty much across the board.
What changed the tone of games in general? I think that almost all of the problems with video games now, in terms of like any of these social messaging issues, can be tied back to Gamergate. I think that it is unironically the original sin.
Outlets were a little bit more cautious. Polygon went all in, leaning into this activist-adjacent, socially progressive lens that they began to frame every game through identity politics.
Gamergate doesn't know, it was like 2014. This like girl got exposed for having a sexual relationship with a person who wrote a review for her game, and then it was kind of like a watershed moment where her straw broke the camel's back, where as soon as this one thing came out, there were a lot of other instances of journalistic behaviors that were unethical. Right? Like, and also, like, by the way, it's okay to write a review of somebody's game, but you have to disclose that you're in a relationship with that person, right? I mean, you can do a lot of and honestly self-deprecate that. And so, yeah, games risk brain too. And so, that's really what it is. And so, unethical quid pro quos, yeah, exactly. Like, so, like, Total Biscuit gave an example of this, is that, like, somebody sent him a video game for review, and they sent him an Xbox to review the game on, to play the game on. And then they said, well, you can just keep the Xbox after you get done reviewing the game. Well, if you do that, you're obviously giving somebody consideration. And when you give somebody consideration, there's a reason for that. It's because you want something back. And I think that type of quid pro quo, you know, like it's this for that, which is like Latin, basically. It's like saying, like, we're going to do one thing for you, and then you're going to give us this back. That's what that term means. And so
I'm not done yet.
that term and like that prevalence caused gamers to feel like all of the media and the things that they were receiving were completely inauthentic and wrong. And that criticism was shifted to being that, like, oh, well, because it's with a woman, that you're not mad about this thing, you're mad because it was a woman. And so it got shifted from being a concern. And by the way, I'm sure there was a degree of like negativity towards women, like there always is. But it was maligned as that. And you see kind of what I'm saying about how this happened? Yeah, it was framed in a way that made it like misogynist, as like gamers are bad, etc. And that's what I think radicalized a lot of gamers against games media. And that's why so many gamers have been celebrating the failures of games media. Is because games media participated in this unethical behavior and also this complete mischaracterization of people that play their games in general.
The reviews weren't about what a game did well, they were about what it failed to represent. And I think their review of Bayonetta 2 is probably the best example of this. A mechanically brilliant action game, well loved and reviewed across the board. And they knocked it down to a 7.5 out of 10 because the reviewer didn't like how sexy the main character was. Not because...
It left me asking how many different ways Platinum could find to run a camera between Bayonetta's legs. What's funny to me about this is that you think that's a problem.
Like nuance.
That's why people play the game.
Let's do this.
The gameplay, not because of the performance, because of problematic sexualizing.
It's sexist, gross, pandering, and totally unnecessary. I disagree. I like it. And I think this is the problem, is that back then a lot of gamers tried to make it out like, oh, it's art or it's whatever. And I think what really kind of caused a lot of these people to lose relevance is just the accepting of, yeah, I know it's completely sexist and it's total gooner content, and that's what we want. Give it to us right now. And I think really what proved that to be true is gacha games. Every gacha game, look at any subreddit, and it's all fan art of the female characters making out. That's just how it is. Telling people what to do. Yeah, exactly. We're now okay with saying we like boobs. Yeah, but you remember, right? Look at the creator of Bayonetta. I know there's plenty of women that are okay with displaying sexuality, but what my point is that I think that a lot of men felt insecure about doing it. And I think now that it's more socially acceptable to do that, guys are more than willing to say, like, yeah, that's exactly what we want to do. And I think that's one of the other big reasons why now I think these people are losing the narrative.
This is the kind of scoring that doesn't just confuse people, it infuriates them. Polygon wasn't just judging the game, they were judging the player. While not saying it overtly, they were saying that this is the kind of content that shouldn't exist, and you shouldn't be okay with liking it. Then came their review of
telling people what to do.
Come Deliverance, where they called the game woefully bland and claimed that women in the game seem to only have 3 functions. They either perform as two-dimensional sex objects, fetch water from a river, or do needlepoint. Ignore...
You'll have to keep fighting until we have a winner.
I've got bad news for you.
Judge,
about the
jury, executioner!
I've got really bad news.
Double KO! So close!
And they're not gonna like it.
The setting, 15th century Bohemia, ignoring Teresa, the woman that saves your life, protects you, and then shares one of the most emotionally grounded relationships that are in the game, ignoring the historical context entirely because it didn't fit the narrative that they wanted to push. A game that prided itself on historical accuracy needed to bend itself to popular media trends and revisions instead of just letting it exist as a contrast to how far we've come as people and as a civilization. I don't think these outlets or these writers understand the kind of damage this approach does. Not only does it do damage to their own credibility, but it does it to the games themselves. Contrast matters. Games that are exploring historical themes or history itself should be able to present that.
Well, it looks like bullshit. Like when I'm playing a historical game and then they have a bunch of female like warriors, I'm like, okay, this is one of those bullshit weird games. Because everybody knows that didn't happen. Like, and then also like, oh, but there's like Joan of Arc or like 3 other examples. Exactly. That's the point. Yeah, anytime I see that kind of stuff, I immediately am like, oh, okay, it's one of these games.
Or villain, I'm not judging.
That world as it was, not as they wish it would have been. But rather than allow creative talent to stand on its own, the media often demands ideological conformity, filtering everything through modern social commentary. And when the game doesn't comply, they wield their platforms like weapons, shaming these developers, poisoning discourse, and trying to turn the audiences against them.
He's completely right about this. He is 300% right about this. Is that they weaponize their platform. And the thing is that, and this is the reason why I do the same thing.
I'm a blunt instrument.
Because like these people are never going to stop doing this. So the only way to fight back against this is to do it back to them.
30 seconds before you attack.
And by the way, there's a lot more of us than there are of them. As you can see by the fact that my channel is doing really well, and they're laying people off. Keep going? Oh, I will. I will keep going until it's done.
This place
Final Fantasy 16 went through the exact same thing. Square Enix wanted to tell a grounded Northern European-inspired fantasy story. But when the director explained,
The battle starts in 5, 4, 3, 2,
that excessive diversity would conflict with the game's lore and tone, he was met with headlines like, Final Fantasy 16 dev has a terrible answer for why the game is so white, or Final Fantasy 16 has no business abiding by historical realism.
No, actually, you're wrong. Nope.
This wasn't coverage, it was a correction. A demand that
this is not journalism, this is activism.
Prepare to engage.
even fiction needs to submit to ideological vetting. I think that these developers should have the freedom to create without being publicly shamed for not fulfilling someone else's social agenda. Not every game has to represent everyone, and not every creative decision is a political statement. And to be fair,
And these people have no problem saying that when a game like South of Midnight comes out. They have no problem saying like, well, this game isn't made for you. Okay, fine. Well, what about when a game's not made for you? Okay, well, that has to change.
I can already hear the counter-argument that players have mounted pressure campaigns to pushing back against what they view as forced representation or initiatives that they don't agree with, but there is a difference between market feedback and institutional pressure. One affects sales, the other shapes perception. The media controls how these games are framed and who sees them. When they start pushing...
Like, they push the narratives and they try to force these things into video games. And they create a chilling effect inside of game development, where if games don't capitulate to their behavior, they will write stories and tell lies about these video games in order to make them look bad. And that's why now, for video games that do play into these narratives and they do actually listen to these journalists, it's like, you know, like the Siren song of Odysseus, right? It's like, you know, if you want to sail your ship onto the rocks, that's fine. And guess what we are? We're the rocks. We'll destroy the ship. And it's worked. And that's why so many of these video games have died. It's because there's been so much pushback from it. And now these companies are afraid of doing it. Get wrecked? Yeah, get wrecked. There's blood in the water now? Yeah, exactly. And you can, by the way, if enough people are negative about a game, you can absolutely kill the game. Don't ever believe that you can't do it. You can. Believe in yourself.
Ideology over insight, it stops being criticism and it starts becoming coercion. What the media never seems to be able to grasp is that this outrage cuts both ways when they pressure studios to mold games into ideological statements and create the backfire. Not just against that game, but the very idea that these games need to carry a message. Assassin's Creed Shadows, South of Midnight Concord, they didn't draw fire in a vacuum. The media helped build the environment where these players now push back. You kept shaping the discourse. Don't be surprised when discourse shapes you right back. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. I mean, this is the reason why Polygon and many of these other media outlets have lost their relevance over time, and it's because in the eyes of players, they've become an oppositional force.
It's because they're wrong. That's the reason why. It's because their viewpoints and their their way of seeing the world is simply wrong. People don't have a problem with politics in video games. People have a problem with the mentally ill, SSRI addicted, upper middle class, white woman, progressive American politics. That's what people don't want to hear. Nobody has a problem with Metal Gear Solid's politics. People do have a problem with politics like Concord. That's the big difference.
That is using their platforms to pressure studios to make changes.
Yeah, it's not that we don't want politics. We don't want your politics.
You know a word I don't like?
Players before themselves. And that's all been proven with recent statements made by Daniel Varva, the creator of Kingdom Come Deliverance. In a recent Czech interview, Kingdom Come creator Daniel Varva opened up about the impact Polygon and others had on him after the first game. He said that it felt like there was
Daniel Varva was the guy that was the creative director. I don't know. Sorry, sometimes I go AFK, but he was the creative director for Kingdom Come Deliverance, and he got a ton of hate back when the game originally came out because the game didn't adhere to certain social norms.
Sword of Damocles hanging over his head.
Yeah.
He admitted he was very afraid that journalists would pull what they did with the first game on him.
This, by the way, is a metaphor for like a Greek story where there's like a sword hanging over a guy's head with like a fine thread on it, and it like it's the idea of like you being on edge, you're gonna be cut anytime.
Got it?
So
Again, complaining that the sequel wasn't very diverse and blah blah blah, to quote him directly. He talks about how he was afraid that they would scour his Facebook, auto-translate his political rants, and write up that he's now a Trumpist right-winger and against this and that. He talks about how that felt like a threat to him and how he was prepared to get fired over it. That is the legacy of Polygon, not just relevant articles, fear, self-censorship, development choices made out of survival, not creativity. You can have
and also, do you want to know one of the really big truths that gamers are actually not right-wing at all, and this is a totally fake narrative that's being created by weird things, is the fact that Metaphor was one of the greatest games that came out last year, and I think that very few people debate that. Metaphor covered very progressive social issues, but it did so in a way that wasn't patronizing to the player, and it was respectful, and it was mature. The entire idea that like gamers, like I don't know what they think that they want, right? And so the medieval, so the media called Dan out. Yeah, I don't know. But Metaphor is one of the top 3 games of all time. It's a very good game, right? Luis Guillaume. Well, I think Luis Guillaume is a really great example, right? Is like if he was a villain in a Western video game, he would not be intelligent. He would not be well spoken. He would not be clever. He wouldn't be able to discover the king's magic, right? He wouldn't have been able to do any of these things. He would have just been like this big, dumb, oafish retard that nobody likes, but we have to kill him, right? He'd have 1 charisma. He wouldn't be attractive. Exactly.
Opinions on Varva, choices that he's made, and the things that he said. However, this is what happens when coverage turns into punishment. When the writers think that they are moral arbiters instead of critics. When review sites become political weapons instead of industry observers. When the players see the media wield this sort of influence, when they see them fail to represent them, what do you think the end result of that is going to be? And it's not like they've only done this once. They've been doing it the entire time with articles like Yakuza examines masculinity with care but leaves women behind. God of War...
Now I'm getting mad.
You want to know why it leaves women behind?
Pulse charge, fire!
Guess who's playing Yakuza?
Good news. Scan show was
Magneto!
I wonder. Ah, jeez. What a fucking mystery.
I'm rough.
Like, I played the Pirate Yakuza
You
game.
heard me coming.
This is
didn't you?
absolutely a shonen.
You're my kind of
It's a
rodent.
total shonen. The entire thing is like that. Like, it really, it's a story written with the spirit of a young man. That's the way it is, and that's who it's going to be. Some women might like it, sure. And there's guys that like anime. Well, let's talk about average.
Director on toxic masculinity and why Kratos asked to change gaming's toxic men. Explain. Why are game companies so afraid of politics in their games? You watch as their coverage turns from...
Because they're not.
But not today.
They're just afraid of your politics because your politics are stupid.
criticizing
That's
the
the
industry
reason
to
why.
criticizing the audience for not agreeing with them. At first, it's a couple of studios that are the issue, and then it's everyone except them is the issue. And you
Right.
can't expect your readers to want to stick around for that, nor be supportive of you or your industry. I mean, at a certain point, you have to wonder who they're even writing for, because clearly it isn't for the player, because the average gamer is
And
not
that's
looking.
another really good component they bring up is like, who is this for? Like, whenever you're writing these articles, like, who's going to read these articles, and like, how many people like that are out there that are going to read them? And we found out the answer to that. Not very many.
To be scolded, psychoanalyzed,
Yeah,
or
not
turned
very
into
many.
moral failure every time they load up a title that doesn't match the editor's worldview. But that's what much of their writing has become, a performance of superiority that's aimed at the very people that they need to stay in business. Instead of cultivating a community, they treated them like they were an obstacle. Instead of insight, they're offering disdain. You cannot insult your readers, ignore their values, and then act surprised when they stop showing up. I mean,
Well,
it's
it's
one of the
also-
articles that they wrote.
I mean, gamers was used as a pejorative term, and that was started by games journalism. Like, I mean, I'm sorry, but like, that's a
30
really
seconds
bad
before you
way of
attack.
marketing
Get
yourself.
ready.
Year. These video games kill fascists, cathartic video games to get your anger out in a healthy way. Listen, I'm all about staying abreast on current events, but watching the fascist white cis hetero patriarchy put boots on the necks of anyone they want gets old fast.
Not for me.
The battle starts in 5, 4.
I love
3,
Space
2,
Marine 2. It was actually
1.
amazing.
All you need to do
Yeah, I
is
had
capture the mission area. Got it?
Great.
Capture this area.
I cannot let Doom do anything.
If you feel like dismantling the systems of oppression with wanton destruction, these games provide the sweet feeling you get from bringing the ruling class down a peg.
This is written by some fucking, like, either fat as fuck or 90-pound kid that's like at Starbucks. Like, this is a kid that has to, like, cry in his bathtub as the DoorDash delivery
Looks
driver
like the
rings
mission
the
area
doorbell
is
and
yours
says,
to capture now. The mission
it's the
area
most
is
pathetic
yours.
fucking shit that you ever
Whoa, what the fuck is this? Have you ever thought about the fact that the vast majority of the gaming audience doesn't tune into this? Likely aren't even paying attention to politics, and they see this extreme rhetoric and honestly failed
And it's
all.
also like, it's so one-dimensional and childish. I think that's also the big problem that a lot of people aren't bringing up,
They ain't
is that
seen
the
nothing
way
yet.
that they explain these issues are just so bad.
for violence as weird and uncomfortable as hell. You write something like this, you publish this under the banner of a games journalism outlet, and then you wonder why you're sold off and your staff is laid off.
What are the odds?
You alienated your audience. You scared developers with silence. You turned your platform into a weapon. Then you pointed it at the very industry that once embraced you. And for what? But let me be clear, there are hardworking people in games media who don't buy into any of this. Talented writers that want to talk about games, who care about storytelling, systems, and creativity. But they have been found out, undermined by the loudest voices in the room. The ones who treat players like problems, developers like enemies, and their own platforms like a soapbox. This is how you kill an outlet. Congratulations, mission accomplished. You have a lot of these outlets
Welcome
and
to
writers that are
DoorDash.
talking at people and not
Jury,
with them.
This is what I said, by the way. Let me see if I can find it here.
This is real good
Yeah,
for
this
all.
is it. This is what I said whenever this came out. The news.
You get a weapon, you get a weapon, you get a weapon.
Welcome home.
I'll patch you up. I'm hunkering down.
You captured more than half of the mission area. Keep going.
This is the way it is.
The exact same time being completely detached from reality, which does not help our situation whatsoever. They're pressuring these games to be made. They're pressuring these changes to be made within these games the players aren't even asking for. They're making articles that the audience and the readers aren't even looking for. Look, man, I'm not here for marching orders. I am here for gaming news. And if that's not where you're going to get to me, then I have no reason to be here. That's what's happening right
Extended
now.
my deployment.
You know, I'll be honest, I had no idea the Polygon was this bad. I had no clue. I haven't really read them in a long time. I usually stick to Insider Gaming because they stick to the news. They have some pretty good writers, but I started going through their article history, and they have some talented people, really talented people. There's some good stuff that they write, but the human eye is trained to find things that don't belong. There is a lot that doesn't belong on Polygon or on the internet at all. But you find yourself asking, who is this stuff even being written for? Even more so, how would you even think?
Well, we found out. We found out who it's going to be. No one.
I know people want to point out the writers, and they are the ones that are writing it, but you have editors.
They found out too.
How do you guys even, how did you have jobs? You don't have no more. How did you have jobs? You should have known not to be posting this kind of stuff. You should have known that's going to drive people away.
Well, no, they don't know that because they put themselves in an echo chamber, and all the people that are around them agree with them and tell them that they're right. And if you do that for long enough, you start believing your own bullshit. And I think that's what's happening.
In a lot of ways, it's just social immaturity. That if you disagree with someone on anything, they have to be the enemy. End of story. That's just where this goes. And you can't include their perspective in good faith because, well, it has to be vilified.
Executioner!
And you're not going
A great example of these are Stellar Blade and Black Myth Wukong. I think those are two really great examples of that happening.
an audience that way, and you're definitely not going to be making any money that way. And I think that the industry, I think these outlets did the same thing that the industry essentially did, which is post Gamergate, they abandoned the initial audience that they had in search for this wider audience that they
think that what they wanted to do is they wanted to go beyond games media and games journalism, and they wanted to become like full-on journalists. But the problem is that they didn't have the skill, insight, or knowledge, or probably even like mindset to be genuine, real journalists. So they thought that if we it's kind of like, this is a weird metaphor, right, or analogy, but I'm gonna make it because I love